My name is Leslie Sheridan, and I am a publisher and editor of an online international newsletter for activists with activism around the world. That's in my free time. In my regular time, I have a client who actually has a PhD in microbiology. And my question is, have you, and why, if we are going to continue down this path of eradication and the whole fictitious pest, whatever you want to call it, why have we not, or have we considered, and if we have considered, what happened to it? Why did they go right to pesticides? The use of compost tea and the use of beneficial microorganisms that has been proven in orchards, vineyards. She's got peer-reviewed studies. Her business is right here in Sonoma County. One thing after the other, using nature's own technology to actually be the pesticide, be the healthy pesticide. Has this been considered? If not, why not?
I don't have that information of what's been considered and not. I can forward up what you have to CDFA.
Yeah, just so you know, I mean, she's got study after study, peer-reviewed, orchards, vineyards, Sonoma County, other counties. Right here in Sonoma, I know of one vineyard, I'm not going to name the name, but took acres, compared side by side, and the owner of the vineyard is very amenable to seeing how does this compare to pesticides. He's got the pesticides over here on so many acres, and he's got her stuff, all the beneficial microorganisms on the other side in the compost tea. Everybody knows what compost tea is, or no? Okay. And I didn't know what it was, so I had to be educated by my client. Had no idea what worm castings were. Anyway, it shows control of pests totally naturally and higher yields than the pesticides and healthier soil.
Who is she? So I can't comment on the specifics of that, but you can count on one hand the number of tools that are really available, and I know CDFA, USDA, all Entomologist. So when I was on the MetFly advisory panel, they had nematodes, the same argument as one of you used those. And the thing is that they tested them in like planted pots. And you can scale this, and so that we had a whole seminar on this, and then it came out what was the scale we used. Well, we used a few pots in a greenhouse, my goodness. You scale this up over 10,000 square miles, it doesn't really work. And so, it's even with this, you would be dealing with the chemicals and so forth, but on the other hand, it still comes down to the question of there's preconditions for moving forward with eradication. They use this in the World Organization and so forth. CDFA should be using this too. But anyway, one of them, of course, is do you have an effective tool? And that isn't good enough, and so we really don't. And this pest, as Dan said, and we both agree, is so widespread that there is no chance, that there is no tool available that would have any chance at eradicating this thing at all. And so, yeah, that's not to argue against using that, but it's not going to do, it's not the magic bullet.
I would just like to add that I'm flattered.
Well, hold it close to you, Dan.
I'm flattered anytime people mistake me for one of my heroes, Jim Carey. So I was complimented, and I think he was talking about me, not being. But if a botanist can reach into the literature and understand this problem, I was where you were 2 years ago. I'll just bring these facts forward. They're going to back down. This is not substantiated. And gosh, I'm a scientist. I'll just bring the facts up. I'll help them do it. I'll volunteer to work. They've got a lot of work out of us already. But they have their program. They have their mandate. It may work perfectly. That's not going to help them decide or implement their program if it's not benefiting a pesticide manufacturer or somebody who had a campaign contribution.
Science on this, it doesn't substantiate what they're doing. There are lots of ways to control it. They're not using them, and this is just it. There might be very easy ways to control it that are even safer than what New Zealand's using.
I'd like to comment just really quickly. There's been a lot of talk about
fighting this issue with rational, scientific-based arguments, which I think is obviously the rational and scientific way to go about doing something and the proper way to do it. However, this is obviously a very political issue, and one of the things that we believe, and I'm trying to encourage people to do, is take a look at this just purely from a political standpoint, and if we can embarrass our politicians into understanding that we are importing New Zealand apples into the United States that are not under the same quarantine or the same restrictions. You can eat an apple that has been grown in an orchard where there's light brown apple moth, in that orchard, and we're bringing it in the United States, and yet we can't do that here in the United States. I think that's a huge opportunity for embarrassment and an opportunity to show people that American farmers are being treated as second class relative to international farmers outside of this country. And I think that's a shame.
If I could make just one quick comment, I think the flip side of what Jim said, that eradication is not a feasible goal, means that basically we have to learn to live with the apple moth. I don't think it's very hard to do because the apple moth hasn't caused a whole lot of problems, but one of the ways that you live with an insect pest is by focusing on growing really healthy plants, because a healthy plant can tolerate a lot more insect damage than a plant that's under stress for some other reason. And so the compost tea that the questioner was talking about is one of those tools for creating healthy plants that can tolerate pests.
My comment on the issue would be that I learned years ago, follow the money seems to be a very interesting thing to do. And if you take the light brown apple moth eradication program and you follow back and trace back the money, which we did, you find it comes from Homeland Security. Homeland Security funded it when CDFA declared through the USDA that they had an emergency eradication problem. CDFA in history, going back to 1992, I believe the number is, have declared 292 eradication programs in this state since 1982. That's how many attempts they've made to eradicate the various insects that are in the state that they claim need to be taken out. I believe it's 14 times on the medfly, something like that, that they've declared it. I think I got that from San Carlos when you did that fantastic presentation, Dr. Carey. The issue is that we find is 30% of CDFA's annual budget comes from declaration of eradication. That's a lot of money to pay salaries and retirement programs and everything else. That's their history that we find is 30% of their annual budget comes totally and completely from their declaration of eradication. When they declare eradication, Homeland Security funds the money through the USDA back to them, and here it is. Like Glenn said, on the table right now is $500 million for the next 5 years for the eradication program of light brown apple moth. That's a lot of money, especially in a time where programs are being cut, right? These guys are, I don't know. On one hand, I don't know if they're that devious, but on the other hand, follow the money. It gets interesting, doesn't it? So that's my comment on it.
Cathy, on the issue of the quarantine, say a portion of Sonoma here is quarantined, and a number of vineyards in that area. And if you get over further on down into Glen Ellen, close to the Santa Rosa, and it's not quite quarantined yet, how are the grape growers going to function? Similarly or differently? Is the ones that are quarantined, there's going to be certain restrictions on them? Will you come out and inspect at the time of before harvest? I mean, the grapes are picked at the time of the right time where the sugars meet, whatever the winery specifications are. How's that going to work?
What we're doing now is outreach, and we've had 7 meetings with growers so far. We're going to have 3 more, one tomorrow, and then next week. And I've been doing outreach to those not currently in the quarantine area, and this is where the whole part with the vineyard and the grape closure, that if, the growers, even if they're not in the quarantine area, get that information out for them to create a best management practice that works for whatever they're using, to walk the vineyards looking for the larvae. If they don't find it before grape closure, then the inspections are less tedious and we would be looking at records. So we're getting that information out to all the growers, not just in the quarantine area.
Have you met with the Fulton 500?
All the growers are invited to our meetings. So to get that information, because once the grape closure happens, and that's somewhere in the middle of June, then they can't be walking the fields looking for the larvae, and then they either tarp their loads to move it to the winery or the processor. Or
They'll all have to tarp, or just the quarantine area?
Only in the quarantine area.
The quarantine will have to tarp?
Yeah.
A mesh tarp or a full cover tarp?
A full cover tarp.
So it's going to...
If we don't have a chance to inspect it, or if they don't follow the best management practice.
How about those that pick at dark with spotlights? Are they going to have to tarp too when they take the grapes out?
Depending on what method they use. It all depends. If they use the best management practice, they don't have to tarp.
So on a hot September day when, or 1st of October, you're picking your cab and you're trying to get it to the winery, and you just start at a day when it's 42 degrees, and by the time you're moving your crop out in the bins, it's going to be 90 degrees,
right.
And you still want them to cover that. They're trying to keep the grapes cool.
What I'm trying to tell you is we're doing outreach now so that they don't have to do that, so that if they follow the best management practices, then they don't have to tarp it. So we're trying to get the word out to the growers. And then if we do walk the fields and we're able to do those inspections, and we'll bring in...
Will you be actually inspecting vineyards?
My sentence?
I'm sorry.
And we'll recruit USDA and CDFA to help us do the inspection through the fields, within 30 days before harvest.
How do you know when...
They'll call us. We're working with the growers. We work very closely with the growers. And apparently, I wasn't here last summer, but the growers, or last fall when they were doing harvest, but staff did a great job of working with the growers in the Carneros area, and the growers were all able to get their product out and process and move their grapes. So I don't think that was a problem.
Okay.
Our department is working really hard to be constructive and work within the confines that we've been given.
By the
so I just got to make that clear.
Okay, but who gave you those confines?
The confines? Well, it's a regulation. It's a quarantine, and anytime there's a quarantine, we try to work within that.
Okay, so you're saying you're working within a who set that?
Well, okay, you have USDA, the United States Department of Food and Agriculture, and they've placed a federal order on the whole county of Sonoma. So if any product is leaving Sonoma to go outside of California, then we would need to do some kind of inspection depending, on where it was going and depending on what the requirements for that product is. For anything inside Sonoma that's going to probably stay in Sonoma or be moved within California, the state has placed interior quarantines where they find 2 or more moths within a 1.5 mile area.
Yep.
So.
Okay, so it's not your office, it's the CDFA, or the direction of USDA?
It's a United States Department of Food and Agricultural quarantine, and the whole county is quarantined. Mm-hmm. But because Sonoma does not really ship to a lot of different places, it's not impacted at that aspect. But the state interior quarantine is placed by the state of California. And my role in that whole thing is to follow whatever the regulation is and work within those parameters. And the best thing I can do now is just to try to get the information out of this will help you if you know this, and that's why we're doing all these grower outreach meetings. Okay. So,
are there any growers here? Oh, thank you. I just think it's important that you're representing the fruit and that area, and we have a couple growers, but apparently affects them. I would have hoped for more of them to be here, so I think it's our job to now let them know what we learned tonight. But that was a side note to what I was going to say. Were you going to say something?
No,
okay.
I'm waiting for your question.
My question's now. So I just, again, Renee Mignani, Sonoma, and I just wanted to ask now that we've all learned quite a bit here tonight, and the rest of the panel has submitted information to the powers that be, and they are the USDA, the forgetting all my acronyms right now.
Department of Food and Agriculture.
Thank you. Do not have to listen to anyone on the panel, but other than you, in terms of what you report to them. So my question is, given what you've learned here tonight, will that go into a formal report to them? Do you report on an ongoing basis? Are those reports made available to the public? Because I see you as our voice. We can all do what we can, but you have a direct connection. So I want to make certain that we have access to what you learn and what you submit, and how do we find that information?
Well, what I've learned tonight is that you're concerned about aerial spraying, and I don't think that's going to be happening in this situation.
I think much more than just aerial spraying.
But I'm not done. This is what I've learned. I've learned there's concern about pesticide use, there's a concern about the environment, there's a concern about what your rights are as citizens, and there's a concern that the state might come in and do things that you're not comfortable with, or that might not, you're concerned about the legality of pesticide use. Those are some of the concerns that I've heard.
Great, and I would hope that you would also support that with that there was scientific evidence backing our concerns. It's not just we're worried. we have leading people in fields that have found information, not just we're concerned. There is information out there. It's accessible. It's been proven, and that information has been tried to get to the people that need to have it, and that I would hope that you would let them know that it's there, and we want our voices heard.
We'll have a conference call tomorrow, and I'll talk to those on the conference call about what was discussed in this meeting.
Great.
And my understanding is CDFA and USDA have received reports from probably everybody on this panel. Is that true?
Right.
Have they received reports from you guys? That's my understanding.
Right. No,
There's a document, a delisting document that's gone forward to CDFA, and it's gone forward to USDA. My understanding is all that information has been put together, and I think some of you may have added information into that.
Okay, and just the second part of my question was, you'll have a conference call, you said tomorrow, but from the information that you use in the conference call, is there anything written that's documented, not just about tonight, but any of your other findings when you're out in the communities with the growers that we can access, and that we can see what is going from the Ag Commissioner to the CDFA and USDA, or US, excuse me. Yeah.
I don't have anything written up now. No.
How often do you report, and is that information available to the public?
I basically, it's on a conference call that we do reports, or it's mostly on the phone that we're reporting.
So
we discuss.
Wow, I'm just surprised that the government, the person that they put into our community and ask to go find information, go see what the community feels, go gather this and come back to us. There's nothing solid that we can then say, yeah, that's what we said, that's what we think.
I guess we're going in two different directions. I do know that once the environmental impact report is done, CDFA and USDA will be here, present, ready to listen and discuss what options or what's going to happen there. I'm appointed by the Board of Supervisors. I implement any kind of regulation through CDFA or USDA or through the Food and Ag Code, but I don't send reports to the state on things that happen, but we would have discussions by the phone on that.
See, this is what we've been up against now for 2 years. We had 8 years of the Bush administration controlling the USDA and the EPA. And President Bush put into management positions people from the very industries that the EPA and USDA were supposed to regulate. And they were working for the industry and the corporations. They threw science out the door. They didn't want to hear about scientific studies. So we come along 2 years ago and we come up with scientific studies, and they don't want to listen to our scientific studies. And that's been one of the problems. They don't want to listen to the science. You know, it may not change with the recent environmental impact report. We may end up in court with them again over the environmental impact report because the Obama administration is trying to change these federal agencies, but a change is coming very slowly, and most of the management people are still Bush appointees in the USDA and the EPA. That's what we're up against here. It's kind of driving this whole thing. So here we are down here in Sonoma County with scientists saying, you don't need an eradication program. This moth causes no damage, and we're wasting all this money. They don't pay attention to it because somebody up there is calling the shots. Eventually, we're going to turn that over, hopefully, with the Obama administration.
Hi, my name is Yannick Phillips from Sonoma. I want to thank all the panelists for coming. Some of you some of you came from very far away, and greatly appreciate it. I'm really happy it's going to be videotaped. So for those who couldn't be present, they'll be able to watch it on video. I have to say, as one of the people who organized this, I am shocked. I outreached to grape growers. I am shocked that there is only one grape grower present in this room, and we live in grape country. I don't know what happened. But if we have another one, I hope that they'll be able to attend. My question is to Dan and Jim. Wanted to know if you've ever had a meeting with the Secretary of Agriculture of California, A.G. Karamura, if you've ever had a powwow, I guess we could call it at this point, with LBAM on the issue of LBAM. And if you haven't, would you be interested in having that with him? That's one question I have.
No, I haven't met with him, but yes, I'd be interested in it. I've communicated with John Connell, and he didn't respond. But anyway, I'm open to this. I know these people. I don't know A.J. Karamura. I've just met him, but I know Bob Dow and a number of others because I served on that panel before, and I'd be more than happy to meet with them.
Okay. I've confronted the Ag Secretary at several instances, sat in on conference calls. They used to have a regular conference call. You could be provided. You could be part of a conference call they held every Friday. I've reported to him in many different ways. I've never met with him in person, and I certainly would welcome that.
Okay. And then just I have to say, being part of one of the people who organized this, main person, I did reach out to CDFA. I reached out to John Connell, Robert Levitt, and I had a chance meeting, a total accidental meeting with A.G. Karamura, and I said, I really want somebody there. Can you please send somebody from CDFA? We wanted an all viewpoints panel. So I'm very sad that they could not attend, but I just want everybody to know that I tried very hard to get CDFA here. And I know they're going to have a once the draft DIR, tell me if I'm right, Cathy, once the draft DIR comes out, they will have a public meeting, something like that, right?
By law, they have to.
Okay.
And it's in legislation, and I think
Will it be in Sonoma, the public meeting? Do you know?
I don't know where it will be, but I would assume there would be more than one public meeting.
Okay.
I think they'd need to have it in Sonoma, in Sebastopol, Healdsburg, and anywhere else where they've established quarantines.
Okay. And then I went to one of the grape growers outreach meeting that you hosted, and thank you for letting me go, even though I'm not a grape grower. I had concern once the meeting was over. I went outside and spoke to a few grape growers, and one of them just said, among a few others, well, we're just going to spray some more. And I've spoken to some grape growers who've said, I haven't heard from any of my grape grower friends that LBAM is an issue. None of us have an issue with LBAM. I think we can kind of agree that it's the quarantines that are the issue for our grape growers, not LBAM. So I kind of have, I don't know how you can answer it or if anybody wants to answer this, but here we have grape growers telling me we're just going to spray more. And then some of those same people saying, well, it's not an issue, LBAM is not an issue, but everybody's very quiet about it. So I don't know if anybody wants to respond to what are we going to do in Sonoma about this? More spraying, but the grape growers don't think it's a problem. So I think that's going to be my last question, but again, I want to thank all of you for traveling very far. Thanks.
I'd like to comment and thank Yannick as a distant observer of what she's done in this county. She's given me a lot of personal hope in such that one person can make a huge difference. In my opinion, that lady stopped the twist ties in this county last year. That lady has been so involved in such a direct, civil way, working with the elected officials and ag commissioners, that I just am in awe as to what she does and how she does it. She is a one-person army, in my opinion.
I think this evening's great, and I actually have learned a great deal myself and appreciate the time and everybody coming out. I think I've realized that the work, for example, that Cathy's doing is to some degree, I think she's trying to bridge that gap and help farmers and, from my perspective, from what she's saying is, help small farmers. I really think the fight is, higher up, as somebody earlier had mentioned with USDA and CDFA, and that, political pressure should be employed there as aggressively as possible. I think if people aren't responding to scientific reasoned arguments that, you have to find another path. So that's my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Chris. Thank you. Cathy?
Well, I appreciate everyone's time and the questions, and I want to meet with a couple of you afterwards and get your information and follow up on some of your concerns with drift and pesticides, and setting up some trainings and outreach on what we regulate with pesticide use and enforcement, because I think that would be very helpful. And also to contact our office if we can do more outreach with other areas that we monitor. That's all I have. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mike?
I'd like to thank Yannick again for this opportunity to come here and share and learn. I'd like to also thank Frank for his efforts in the court cases to bring checkmate to a position where it's banned for use in this nation. I just hope that they don't rename it and come out with something else just like it. Yeah. But I thank you for showing up, and I hope that you would go home and tell 10 people about what's going on here, and ask them to tell 10 people, and ask them to tell 10 people, so that we can grow this concern. It is a real problem. I don't know how we're going to solve it unless the people get involved and help our elected officials and representatives do the right thing for us. That's the only way I think this is going to be turned around. Thank you.
I think sometimes it's really hard for an individual person to feel like they can influence what the government does, even at a local level, a state level, or a federal level. I want to thank you all for having that faith that your actions can really make a difference. And I think one of the things that we learned last year about the apple moth is that when a whole lot of people individually work together, they can make a huge, huge difference. So I hope you'll carry that optimism with you as you work to make sure that whatever happens here in Sonoma is meets your concerns.
As I started by my comments before, I was professionally interested in this, but personally also. My children and my family were under the spray zone, and so it was an emergency for me to voice my opinion and learn as much as I could. The support I've found and the wonderful people I've met with this effort have enriched my life greatly, and several of them are in the room, and we continue to work together. I am available. I'm going to be vigilant on this because I still am very committed to doing what's necessary to take this ridiculous thing off of. You know, I brought forward the idea that the reputations of CDFA and USDA were at risk because we needed them. This is just one pest. It's not of concern. We should just forget about it. We should live with it, embrace it. You know, say that it's part of our bioflora now, and because there are other things that are out there and dangerous insects. Like really, we need to have some leadership from USDA and CDFA to believe what they're doing is the right thing and to protect us. And when it's so transparent that I can take entomology papers as a botanist and get some sense out of it and find out that the process that they're using is nonsensical, I mean, it needs to be a little bit more complicated than that, honestly. And, you know, I've been called a fringe or a radical, and I'm not any of those things. You know, I just took this on and I did the research that they should be doing, and I thought I was helping, and hopefully they'll come around.
You know, I see, I come back to a bigger picture here and the longer term, and that is, if you go back to the eradication of or attempt at gypsy moth in the Northeast with DDT, is that the poisons changed, but the mentality is pretty much the same. And then I started with CDFA with medfly, and again, the poison had changed, that it was malathion rather than DDT, but nonetheless, the paradigm still was in place. Now you come to LBAM now, and again, it's this concept that eradication is still possible. If we learn nothing, is that eradication is so extraordinarily difficult that really it should not be built into the strategy. So I come back to where we need to revisit this whole paradigm. And as I said before, the University of California, this is what we do. And I think I'd like to work with Yannick and others here that to get UC involved at a very high level, not just cherry pick panelists like they have on the technical advisory panel and so forth, but go to President Udoff, go to the Vice President Dooley and so forth, and do something really important and profound here. So anyway, that's my thoughts here. Thank you.